Miracles are not heaven. What does that mean? This is an amazing story. This is an incredible miracle that cannot be denied. But when we read stories like this, we are tempted to ignore the limitation of the miracle. And when we do that, we miss the whole point, okay? Here's what I mean. It was undeniably a miracle that healed this man. He could not walk for decades. Now he can walk. He can jump. He is blown away. The community is blown away. Is that amazing? It's amazing, right? This is an amazing story. But miracles are not heaven. This guy, he was still susceptible to what we call arthritis. This guy, you know what happened when he walked through the doorway in his house too fast? You know what he did? He stubbed his pinky toe. Have you ever done that? You ever just want to cry out and say bad things because you stub your pinky toe? You feel like it's broken? He stubbed his toes. This guy could have broken his bones. The guy who could not walk, who now can walk, 3 years later could have been doing work in a field with a donkey and a cart. That cart could have fallen on him and crushed his legs, and he would have never walked again. This guy who could not walk, who was healed, you know what? He still got food poisoning and all of the glorious things that accompany food poisoning. This guy who was healed, you know, he got older, and he woke up one day and he realized his hair was receding. It was migrating, and hair was growing out of his ears and his eyes and not on his head. This guy got out of his bed and threw his back out, reaching down to get his sandal. Guys, you know what I'm talking about, right? You do. You will. You do. This guy had to deal with the reality that his eyesight got worse, his memory got worse, his hearing got worse. This guy who was healed still had to deal with the reality of worry, fear, anxiety, and depression. He had to go get a job. He had to go pay his bills. This is not just true of this guy. This is true of all who are recipients of miraculous things like this. Do you remember the story of Lazarus? Right? This is like famous New Testament story. Lazarus is a friend of Jesus. John records it for us in John chapter 11. He's a friend of Jesus. Jesus is out. Lazarus dies, okay? And there wasn't like an incident necessarily that happened. He just got sick and he died. And so he's put in a tomb, which is where you put dead people. And Jesus comes back. And on the fourth day, Jesus calls out to Lazarus, and Lazarus comes out of the tomb, okay? Now, if you're there, are you freaking out at this moment? Right? You're like, what do I make of this? This guy was dead. You got your phone out recording this going, he's walking. I don't know what to do. This is an incredible story. How crazy is that? Dead for 4 days and then brought back to life. Now, there's a temptation to just leave it there and go, man, it must have been awesome to be Lazarus. Like, you were dead and he brought you back to life. The rest of your life must have been awesome. Except for it wasn't. Because a couple verses later in John chapter 12, we read this. The chief priests made plans to put Lazarus to death. Do you see that? Is it a miracle that Lazarus was brought back to life? Absolutely. Did it mean the rest of his life was great? No, he was in worse trouble after the miracle than he was before. Now people have death threats. Miracles, friends, don't fix everything. They don't fix everything. We interpret it like, oh, he was healed and everybody lived happily ever. No, he was healed and then people tried to take his life. Consider this. Lazarus, he still died. You know that, right? He still died. That one moment did not define the rest of his life. He was still a human being. He still died. You know, the guy who was in this text in Acts chapter 3 that we're reading about, you know that he still died? The miracle didn't change that. Miracles aren't everything.